can do that. I don't care what you say.
Hey everybody, in this one we're going to take a look at the release 1 for the 4K224 or the ESPN NFL 2K4 release that RateSports put out. There's been a lot of information put out here, a lot of work went into it, and this is just going to cover the PC platform. So let me get out of here. If you go up on the repo, there will be links in the description. You'll have an option now to download as a GME add-on. So if you have 2K23 installed and you just want to add this as a GME utility add-on, you can do that. You would download this here. Once you have the files, you'll extract it. Take a look at the README because it's going to take you through what's needed with the steps. But what we're going to do is we're going to take the mods folder. You're going to go into your existing install directory, open this up, and then you would just take this mods folder and either move or copy it into your install directory and let that finish. And then once that's done, you can close out of your install directory and you would just launch the MyMC utility. You would find your mem card and then you would import the rosters from the rosters folder. And that's it. And then once you have that, you would just make sure you come into your GME utility. You're going to find the 2K4_NFL 4K24 game mod, and you would enable that and then launch your game. Make sure you launch 2K4, and then when you're in game, just load the rosters, load the playbook if you want to, in settings, and then that would be it for that piece of it. If you want to do the full install, something that's changed with the installer this time is that it's going to support not only first-time installs, but it's also going to support updates. So no longer having to have multiple installers to do different things or drag and drop. So it'll be one installer for everything, and then moving forward when it comes to rosters, I have a plan in place for that when we get to that point. But I'll just go through the full installation now. So if you're doing a full fresh install and you want it standalone independent of your other installs, you would download this installer package here. And once you extract that, you'll have the quick setup guide, and in here is going to be steps that you can follow or reference if you need to for any of the pieces that we're going to go through here. But you'll have the installer folder, and then you'll have the PDF guide. You just go into the installer, you're going to run this. I always run it as administrator just because, and I recommend doing that because sometimes people who are logged into their Windows PCs might not necessarily have local admin privileges. So once this pops up, it should be familiar, just accept the agreement. And of course, remember, PS2 BIOS, game disk ISO, all that's on each of us to get or create on our own. There's a lot of good documents and a lot of good information out there on how to do that, especially over at PCSX2.net, the guides for setup. So if you don't have that information, don't ask in the community, just do what you need to figure that one out. Well, next here, little information, we're going to say next, and then here you're going to be asked, where do you want to install this? I always just put it on the main directory level or the main drive level. So I'm going to put this one on C and say next. Leave this enabled, you definitely want shortcuts. Next, it's the little summary, we'll say install. We'll let that finish. Once it's done, we'll finish up. Alright, so we're done. I'm not going to launch it because I need to add my BIOS and my game disk ISO, so let's move that there. You'll have new shortcuts on your desktop. You'll see NFL 2K4, or 4K24, sorry, for this one. And you'll have the mods, and then you'll also have the emulator installer. So what we'll do now is you're going to take your BIOS and your game disk ISO and put them into the install directory. So I'm going to open the install directory here, and I'm just going to copy what I already have. Alright, we can close out of that, and then go ahead and launch the emulator first time. And go into settings, and then from here I would go right to graphics, and I would set this to whatever you're using, whether you use an AMD card, NVIDIA card, whatever. Make sure those match what your hardware is. Memory cards, everything should be fine in here. If you have more memory cards you want to add later, you can do what you want to in there. One thing, let me close out of this piece now. One thing, everyone can ask questions about the controller. So I recommend you come into controller 1, make sure your controller is connected, and then remap everything for yourself. This way you have it set the way that you want it. I flip my triggers. That's just one of those things I always do. And I know that maybe throws some people off. So make sure you remap your controller. And then you won't have any issues with that. So next we're going to jump into creating that 40 gig VHDD. So you're going to come into settings again, network and HDD. You're going to enable down here for this, and you're going to go to browse. And then I recommend putting it into the VHDD folder inside the install directory that was created, only because it keeps it all together. But I know some people put this in other places, but you're going to want to navigate into this folder and say save, so that it forces it into that directory. And once that updates, we should see the HDD file update here to the path that we selected, which it did. And then we're going to say create image, and we'll let this finish. And this will, you know, how fast this takes will depend on what you're running it on. I'm running it on my storage devices or M2 chips. Other people might be using SSD or what have you. So that might just, mileage will vary with that. So we'll say, okay, here, now that's completed. And then we'll close out of here. And then what you want to do next, which we didn't do it, but we'll go ahead and say add game directory. And then I'm going to navigate into my install directory, the ISO folder. I'm going to select that folder. And when it pops up, do you want to scan? I'm going to say yes, because that's where I copied my game disk ISO. And included is the ULE 438 boot ISO that we're going to use to format that VHDD. So they're in there, we'll see those. Now we're going to format that VHDD that we just created. So we're going to fast boot the 438. And the only purpose for this ISO is really to help us format that virtual disk that we created. So we're going to do circle for file browser. We're going to go down to miscellaneous, circle, and then HDD manager, circle. Give this a second, it'll come up. And then there's nothing in here really. You see the R1 menu down there. We're going to just hit R1 on the controller and then say format. Okay. All right, and that's it. We're done. So you can back out or you can just shut down that boot. So at this point, you're ready to play. But if you have challenges with that, in the setup guide or the quick guide that I put together, it just gives you a little overview of the steps so that you can reference that in case you get stuck. Some people run into some challenges. One critical thing that I'm going to mention to everyone is that make sure that you're running a US BIOS. Some people are running PAL and different region BIOSes, and it's just not going to work. BIOSes do play a different impact on some of the visuals and different things like that with the game, I've noticed. So me personally, I run 2.0, but I know there's newer versions that are available. So really, you just got to kind of find that sweet spot for what version you're running. Something else to keep in mind too is that this build is still based on the 172868 build, which is in development. That's the build that I used when we first decided to shift away from the stable 1.6 using the experimental plugin from Topaz. But if you go to newer versions, because you can upgrade this if you wanted to, but if you do go to newer versions, just keep in mind that it could, Jersey fonts and different things like that might be different. Visual display might be a little bit different with the game, so just keep that in mind. And for now, we're going to stick with the baseline of the 2868. All right. So here we can just launch the game and jump right into it. We'll load our roster files. All right. So once we're in here, we're going to load save. Sorry, we're going to load save. We're going to do load. Say yes, and then here on the memory card preloaded for you is going to be the latest roster that Gil Goldberg spent a lot of time on. Between him and Reed, a lot of time went into this. Really good roster file. There's a settings file, and then there's also a playbook. So if you're going to load these, I would load the roster first, and then load the playbook. And you can either play that way, or if you want to, then load the settings. So, but I believe everyone has their own preference when it comes to different display and other settings. So it's really at your discretion at this point. A lot of work went into this. Really big credit and thank you to Raid Sports for continuing to do all the work that he's doing. I'm going to go to quick game here and you can see, there's more to it than this. Once you get scratch the surface a little bit, he did a lot of stuff. So you'll see some pretty cool stuff in here if you start playing a little bit more and hitting the different areas and features that are available in the game. One thing to note here is if you want to do the GME mods, there are a few here. So if you load this up, you'll have there's end zones, there's CBS, there's a couple different ones. If you want to use the Xbox controller, you can load this up. And if you want to, now here's one thing I think that everyone should kind of think about doing. Is quick keys. So if you go to settings and if you do the hotkeys here, and then if you do, let's see, graphics, and you want to go down here to toggle texture replacement. So I set this to F10 so I don't have to go into settings each time. So now that I loaded a GME package, instead of having to go through settings, I can just come into here, make sure it's highlighted, hit F10 to disable, F10 again will re-enable, and then whatever packages I load, you can do that on the fly, which is why I still like using the GME utility. I'm glad Cujo pointed that out, a couple of years ago when we were doing the early mods. So there's a few things in here to use if you want to, and then more things might be coming, I don't know, but keep an eye out on that. And then really just enjoy the mod. Big credit to again Raid Sports. I know EGB11, Cujo, Gil Goldberg. There's just so many people in the community that do so much work. So I can't say thank you enough to everyone. I'm happy to see where things are for the community. Hopefully everyone enjoys the updates that Raid put out for 2K4. I love the game, and I wish I could take the best of both and mush them into one, but I can't. But I find myself coming back to this one because I love the run game in it. So, and some other stuff. But hopefully this helps everyone. Have a good time playing 4K24, and if anything comes up, please share some feedback, and if you have issues, obviously use the Discord community to share that feedback. Thanks, have fun.